Hi, welcome to Homeopathy Heal. My name is Joanna Franklin, and I'm going to talk about Mercurius, Mercury, the homeopathic Mercury. And this is part of the series about Polycrests in homeopathy. And Mercury is one of the Polycrest, and I will explain why in a minute. So just a few words for those of you who are new to this channel and to homeopathy in general. So Polycrests are those remedies that have been used for a very long time, which means that we have had extensive experience with using these remedies. We know what they can be used for, and therefore they can be used for a much wider range of symptoms compared to other remedies. So mercury as a metal, we all know that mercury is a heavy metal. We know that it's one of the most toxic substances for human beings on the planet. But at the same time, mercury has been used in medicine forever, for millennia. So the Romans used to mine mercury for medicinal purposes. It was already used to mainly treat skin conditions like psoriasis, leprosy, because it was found that mercury was good at healing seemingly skin lesions. The fact that mercury was used as medicinal did not hide the fact that mercury was also recognized as a very toxic substance to be in contact with, which is why the Romans would use either slaves or prisoners or people who were condemned to death to mine mercury, because they knew that just the act of mining mercury would kill the men who were doing it. So fast forward a few centuries, mercury was the only indeed treatment for syphilis in the 17th, 18th, up to the 19th century. Again, because one of the symptoms of syphilis are these boils, these marks that appear on the skin, on the face predominantly, and mercury seemed to heal and hide these skin symptoms in the first stages of syphilis. However, the use of mercury down the line would cause worse symptoms than the actual disease. We know that mercury is a neurotoxin. As a heavy metal, it likes to lodge itself in fatty tissues and particularly in the brain. And so after a prolonged use of mercury, the patient would eventually become what was termed as insane. And there was this confusion about what caused the insanity. Was it the syphilis? Was it the mercury? And eventually, doctors realized that mercury was worse than the disease, because it was actually causing mercury poisoning. Mercury is still used even today as filler for dental fillings, for example. It's only in recent years that dentists and doctors have realized that mercury, particularly in the mouth, and we will see that mercury as a homeopathic remedy has a particular affinity for conditions in the mouth and throat area. And mercury is not the best thing to put in your mouth, to keep in your mouth. And a lot of people have been undergoing fillings, mercury filling removals, which is a procedure that must be done incredibly slowly and carefully, and ideally with the help of a homeopath, because just extracting or taking away the fillings without any precaution would flood the system. The mercury fillings would inevitably break, and all this mercury would just go into your bloodstream, and it's not something that you even want to think about. I have had cases of that with patients who did the mercury filling extraction with their dentist very quickly, abruptly, and suffer the consequences. And it's not something that I would recommend. So what is mercury from the homeopathic point of view? So I've already mentioned it does have an affinity with the mouth and the throat and all conditions of this particular area. So mercury in homeopathy is called the thermometer of homeopathy, because first of all, patients, people who need mercury as a remedy, are incredibly sensitive to changes of temperature, either cold or hot, and so they never seem to be feeling well, whether it's too hot or too cold, or simply the changes in season that affects them in a negative way. There are different types of Mercurius in homeopathy. There is Mercurius vivus, Mercurius solubilis. In terms of effectiveness or ways to use, how and when you would use either or, from my perspective, there is no difference. And so in the Helios basic kit, I believe you have the Mercurius vivus, and it's absolutely fine. But if you only have the Mercurius solubilis, that's fine too. Okay. So the keynote for Mercurius in homeopathy really is the separation, the smell, the bad smell, whatever discharges you're having with Mercurius, they're going to be smelling badly. And so, for example, if we have gums infections, and it's predominantly infections, so it can be gums, it can be throat infection, it can be strep, tonsillitis. When the tonsils get coated, you get spots on the tonsils, and the tonsils get swollen, enlarged, and there is great pain. Definitely Mercurius. The pain can go up and radiate to the ears. So ear infections when there is discharge from the ear, and again, the discharge smells really badly. Your breath smells badly. You can get canker sores, mouth ulcers that are very, very painful. So all these conditions with infection and suppuration, think about homeopathy, homeopathic Mercurius. So when we think about the source, when we talk about mercury poisoning, what are the symptoms of mercury poisoning? So some of the symptoms include increased salivation with intense thirst. And so this is one of the symptoms that you can see, and you can prescribe Mercurius. There is a lot of sweating. The sweating, again, smells really bad or worse than usual. And this sweating is not like a sweating that you can have during detox that makes you feel better. This sweating actually makes you feel worse. It makes you feel weaker. It's like loss of energy, which makes sense. You're losing fluids. There is no replenishment of fluids. So again, gums, bleeding, a metallic taste in the mouth, abscess, teeth abscesses or gums abscesses, swollen glands in general. The glands here around the neck, but as I said, also tonsils. And in case of doing the removing mercury fillings, dental fillings, as I mentioned, it is really important that you choose the dentist who's going to do the procedure carefully. There are some holistic dentists who know how to do it. If you are going to do that procedure done, make sure to have Mercurius remedy with you, and take the remedy before the procedure and after the procedure every time you go and see the dentist. Okay, and it can be 30C or 200C, depending on the symptoms and depending on how long the procedure is. In general, mercury poisoning, if it's been sustained for a long period of time, and for example, people have been working in certain industries, in factories, or in areas where mercury was mined, perhaps even years before, but that means that the mercury has entered the water system, the soil, etc. That can eventually give mental, emotional symptoms. And mercury, as I said, is a heavy metal, and heavy metals, and particularly mercury, hide and feel better in fatty tissues in the body. Our brain is 95 or more % fat, and that's where mercury will go. And the thing about heavy metals, and mercury in particular, is that it can just sit there for years and years without giving any particular symptoms. And this is why it has taken so long for doctors and the medical profession to make the link between mercury and heavy metal poisoning and certain conditions. So mercury will affect your speech. It will affect, so you will have slurring of speech, or loss of memory, or aphasia, complete loss of speech. This is why Mercurius is one of the remedies prescribed for children with autism, nonverbal children, if mercury is part of the picture, perhaps mercury poisoning or heavy metals exposure early on in life. But it also causes mood swings. Mercury is a very unstable substance, and this instability, that's why it's called quicksilver, it's never still, it changes shape all the time, and this is reflected in the mental and emotional picture. Mercurius patients can be very moody. The moods can go up and down, very aggressive one moment, and the next minute very, very depressed. And so think about what is labeled as bipolarism, bipolar disorder, and so on. So it is a very unstable, and eventually, if the farthest stage, the most severe stage, is what was used to be called simply insanity. So loss of, not recognizing loved ones, not having any memory. Long-term memory is good, but short-term memory is terrible. Many of these symptoms remind us of what Alzheimer's is, or Parkinson's disease, tremors, or stiffness, and the gradual loss of cognitive skills. So In general, Mercurius is one of those remedies that are included in the basic kit because it is such a good remedy to have for acutes like sore throats and ear infections and mouth ulcers and abscess and so on. So it is a very versatile remedy, and this is why this is what makes Mercurius a Polycrest. So I hope this has been useful to you, and there are other videos on this channel about Polycrest remedies and about other things and other topics. And so thank you for listening, and I'll see you the next time.